But I think for him, like I said, he was stubborn on the vision. The details he was flexible on, right? In his case, hey, I had to sit behind one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. How do I make the best of this? Well, I'm going to make sure that I watch the way he studies, the way he prepares, and just all the things he does to make himself Aaron Rodgers a Hall of Fame quarterback, right? So I think for him, I think he handled it the right way. I don't know that a lot of quarterbacks would have been able to handle it the way he did. But for me, that's what that would be what I learned.
Welcome back to another episode of the Athletes First Family Podcast, the quarterback series. I am Brian Murphy, CEO of Athletes First, joined by my trusty co-host, AJ Stevens. Welcome back, AJ.
Thanks, Murph. Happy to be back for another episode. On this podcast, we talk about Athletes First, experience representing quarterbacks. For those new listeners out there, we currently have $1.4 billion of quarterback deals on our books, representing quarterbacks. And today we have two agents who represent one of those players, Jordan Love, and Andrew Kessler and David Mulugheta. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, welcome. David, welcome back. You're setting a record. This is your third episode. No one else has done that, so congratulations on yet another record you can put to your resume.
There you go.
And Kess, welcome to your first podcast.
It's good to be here.
I'm very excited about this. We're taking a very unorthodox approach today. We're also setting a record for most people on set, four of us, but it's going to be well worth it because you two have a great history together. And then, Kess, you are, like I like to say, one of one. I mean, very few, no agents have the passion and the history and experience of quarterbacks that Andrew Kessler does. So it's going to be fun.
Very kind of you. Very
It's
kind.
going to be awesome. All right. So, AJ, you know the deal. We've told everyone about David. He tried to get us to go again. We're not going to. We're going to go straight to Kess. Give us Kess's stats.
Yeah, I know David wants us to go through his record breakers again, but first we're just going to talk about Kess's experience. A lot of quarterback experience on there, right? With the Mannings, Peyton and Eli, Alex Smith, Mark Sanchez, Daniel Jones, and now with Jordan Love. But you also have some other record-breaking deals for Michael Thomas, Bobby Wagner. You've done great deals for Kelechi Osemele.
Earl Thomas, Michael Dixon, highest paid punter in the league. So.
Highest paid punter. This is the first time we've had someone on with the highest paid punter.
Yes. It's,
Someone's got to be the highest paid punter. Someone's got to be it.
quite the career. Do we get all the deals, Kess, both of them?
Got plenty of them.
Some, yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations on all that. But we're going to go back to the beginning, right? Let's start with, where did you grow up?
Grew up in New York City with my mom and my dad. And yeah, pretty normal childhood for a New York City kid.
But in the city or just in New York?
In the city, yeah, right in the city.
Awesome. And then tell us a little bit about your parents.
Parents, so we're talking about my mom mostly. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, my mom's great. Normal, awesome mom. My parents met when they were 17 years old at Columbia, and my dad is Jeffrey Kessler, who, being modest, is a very well-known sports attorney and antitrust labor litigator. So I was really fortunate. A, he's a better dad than he is a lawyer, but B, that he got to expose me to a lot of what he did growing up. And he didn't read me the collective bargaining agreement at night. I know you like to sometimes say that or joke about it, or people do. So it wasn't that so much, but he did bring me to NFLPA meetings when I was a kid. So I got to build a legitimate relationship with people like Gene Upshaw and Dick Bertelson and Tom Condon, who I would later start my agent career working for, and stuff like that. And when I was in high school, I got to intern at the NBPA and meet all the people there. And he, went to a lot of games, went to all-star games, and I certainly was very aware of what he was doing. And I always wanted to work on the player side if I was going to work in sports, which I kind of decided when I was maybe 12, 13, 14 years old, it'd be fun to work in sports, and realized I wasn't going to be a player. But I certainly was always very focused on the player side of it, because that's what I grew up. That's what I grew up around, and in general, kind of wanted to be on the employee side, not the management side.
Well, just to take a couple steps back there, I mean, Mr. Kessler, Jeffrey Kessler, is the number one sports lawyer in the world, right? And he does international work. He's worked for Tom Brady. He's worked for all these great people. But he works for the NFLPA.
Yeah, he's been the outside counsel for the NFLPA since 1989.
And other leagues too.
And the NBPA, going back even earlier to the Oscar Robertson case when he was really young in the late 70s. He's now the outside counsel for the baseball players. He's one of the co-lead lawyers on the current NCAA litigation, which everyone, well, not everyone, but people would know a lot about. That the House settlement, that's his case. The Alston Supreme Court case was his case. He's done a lot of work in soccer. He's advised golfers. He helped the U.S. women's national soccer team in their equal pay case. He has a case right now for Michael Jordan's NASCAR team against NASCAR, and he's known Jordan going back to the basketball stuff. He's done some hockey stuff. So yeah, he's got a good resume.
We try to get him on the podcast several times to keep
you might be able to get him. You might be able to get him. He is not an expert though in NFL quarterback contracts to the level that this group is. So you might need to
different series
broaden the subject perhaps.
But you're also like you're very close friends. I mean, you golf together, you vacation.
My dad and I, we have a great relationship. Yeah. He's like I said, he's as great a lawyer as he's a better dad and grandpa than he is a lawyer.
Awesome. And he's better at all that than golf, but it's fine.
You know what? He's got him better golf. He's gotten all that to him. He's better golfer at 70 than he was at 50. It's unusual.
Well, there you go. Well, okay. So you grew up and you were exposed to just this world of sports that most people have never heard of. Like David said, like when he was in college, he didn't really know what a sports agent was. It never entered his mind. But you grew up maybe not getting the CBA read to you at night, but going to the offices and seeing him in action and whatnot. And so then you did through high school. You went off to college. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Pomona College in Claremont, California, which is about 40 minutes from here. And I said to my college counselor, I said, I want 3 things for college. I want to go to a really good school. I'd like to go to California. I'd like to keep playing football. So my football ability was going to rule out some of the bigger, strong academic schools in California. So the East Coast is filled with a lot of, as you know, as a New England guy, it's filled with a lot of these small, really great small schools, Williams, Tufts, Swarthmore, Amherst, right, Wesley, and actually a lot of the schools have produced a lot of NFL coaches or executives, right, like Belichick from Wesley and DeCostas from Colby, like people like that. It's interesting. So I was like, there's got to be some schools like that in California, and there aren't a ton, but there are a few, and Pomona College was one of them. So I applied early, and that's where I went.
So you went to school. You played football there?
I did all 4 years.
Okay, and then
maximized my little bit of talent.
So you play there for 4 years. You want to be in sports. You want to be pro player as opposed to pro owner, right? Did you know you wanted to be a sports agent?
So when I was in high school, I actually interned at the NBPA.
Okay.
And one of those summers was a lockout summer, so that was really interesting. That was great. Got to sit with Billy Hunter, who was the executive director at the time, and Ron Klempner, the general counsel, and that was pretty cool. Even cooler in retrospect. Right, I was 18 and getting to do that. And then in college, I interned with a basketball agent named Mark Fleischer.
Sure.
Whose father is Larry Fleischer, who really started the NBPA. And that was a cool experience because it was my first real exposure to agent stuff. And the first real working with a player at that age actually was Tony Parker, the basketball player. And my assignment was to go with Tony on his pre-draft team workouts because between his fluent French and broken English and my fluent English and broken French, we could communicate pretty well. Wow. We're also right about the same age. So Tony and I went to Orlando, Boston, Utah. He's 18, I'm 19, and for about 2 weeks. And that was really cool. And then it culminated with him being the last pick of the first round by the Spurs. And 20 years later, he's a Hall of Fame player. That's all that, a cool career. So that was my first exposure to the agent stuff with Mark. And that was really cool. And I did 2 summers like that with Mark before I graduated. And then when I graduated, I started working with Tom Condon, who full time.
So one of your first real work experience in sports is to be a intern / translator for one of the best basketball players of all time.
Yeah, we didn't know. Yeah, at the time, it's funny because I remember Tony, where I'm not making this up, where in Orlando, he had a day between his workouts. So we're hanging out at Universal Studios Orlando, like going on rides. And he's like, I can't do his French accent, but he's like, Andrew, like I want to have a career like Kobe, And at that time, Kobe was only someone whose career could start in young. I mean, that'd be awesome, but it's Kobe, right? And his career is obviously remarkable, and we didn't stay in close touch, but we stayed a little bit in touch and everything, and it was a great, it was a really, really cool first experience.
That's amazing. So you graduate from Pomona, and then you start law school right away?
No, I graduated from Pomona in June 2003, and I went right to work for Tom Condon.
Okay.
Who at the time was the head of IMG football. That was a full-time job.
Okay.
And kind of supporting Tom and whatever he needed. And I got fortunate because, let's mention Eric Schaefer. Eric Schaefer was Tom's general counsel when I got there in June.
Okay.
But by the end of July, maybe, he had taken the job with, at the time, the Redskins, to be their lead contract negotiator, general counsel, salary cap guy. So Tom needed to fill the position quickly. And the way Tom would handle that, he's not going to, again, this is 2003, there's no broad church. It'd be, Andrew, you think you can help me with this? Yeah, Tom, I think I can. Okay, let's do this. And I sort of moved into that type of like lead contract support role immediately, and did that with Tom for a year plus until I went to law school. And that's like, it was just a cool time. Like, we did Peyton's first big veteran deal, which at the time, changed the market then.
Yep.
Eli was the #1 overall pick of the draft. So we did his rookie deal. That was all right before I went to law school, which was August 2004.
That's great. I mean, like you said, like AJ, you said you start off in basketball with a legend, and then you go work for Tom, who, like, absolutely, I think we all have a lot of respect for Tom. I know you do. Tom was great to me. He was an absolute giant in the industry, and he did a lot of quarterbacks.
Tom was great. I mean, David's heard me say this many times. Like, if you ask me who the two most influential people to me, obviously my dad and Tom, and those are like the clear two. Yeah, Tom was great. And he also, the really cool thing was, he really, aside from doing work, like, I would just sit in his office and he'd be on the phone with Bill Polian negotiating, right? Again, it's 2003. So like, regular phone, speakerphone, he would just like let me listen to him negotiate for an hour, right?
Yep.
And then he'd call Peyton and like explain to Peyton. So it was like a lot of learning that way.
Yep.
It was really cool.
So you're working this job with him, and then you still decide to go back to law school, which most people go to law school to get that job.
That's true. So both Tom, myself, talked to my dad, all thought it'd be a good idea to go to law school. Not so much because of the practicality of what you're going to learn, right? Like, you're not sitting there in Civ Pro learning stuff you're going to apply to this directly, but just critical thinking and developing your brain, analysis, logic, that type of thing. And I knew that as much as I could work during law school and keep doing it.
I think it also helps, like, when you go into a living room and people don't know you, to have a law degree. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think people put a lot of premium on that you don't necessarily need it, but I think it's helpful.
Never hurts. It never hurts to have a law degree.
Yeah. So where'd you go to law school?
Texas, University of Texas. And that one, again, like, I'm a little formulaic. I want, again, go to a really good school with really strong football, because I knew this was what I was doing. So that's kind of how I picked it.
That's awesome. And then, so you go there for 3 years. The whole time you're still working with Tom and IMG.
Yeah, the whole time.
You graduate from, you're at law school. You continue to work for Tom at IMG. And then you graduate, and do you go back to IMG?
No, I go to, Tom at that point had become an free agent. And he had left IMG. His contract expired. Him, Casey Close, was head of baseball, Pat Brazon, head of hockey, and they all went to CAA and started CAA Sports. Okay. So I was with Tom at CAA then for about a year and a half until you hired me.
Yeah. And then we hired you, and then and you actually were one of several, first of several legends who we were able to have come over from CAA, which another great company. But so you came over, and then you were followed by Trace Armstrong, and then Todd France. What made you make the decision to come over here, except for opportunity to be on the podcast?
15 years, man. Or 17 years. I was like, there's going to be a podcast. So Tom had gone to CAA, and I wanted an opportunity to kind of help maybe develop my own practice a bit, which with Tom, everything was great. But it was very much all, supporting Tom and another agent there at the time named Ben Dogger. And as it should be, everything was going to kind of flow through them. And like I said, I kind of wanted to grow my own practice. I knew Athletes First was sort of on the come up. I'm not know if I ever saw it going as far as you've taken it.
We've taken it. Yep.
Yeah. Well, a lot of credit to you on that. But I knew it would be kind of a cool place to work. I knew Dave a little bit through my dad. Yep. So my dad connected me with Dave. I talked with Dave. Remember, I came in here, it was the old office near John Wayne.
Sure.
Sat with Dave, sat with you, sat with Justin, sat with Mark Humanick, met Carmen, Natalie at the time. That's basically who was here, right? Yep. Spiro. And decided to make the move. And I thought, it would be a cool setup, a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity. a lot of freedom to do things like the way I wanted and build something. And, you know, I can't lie. At that point, Tom was going from Kansas City to St. Louis, and this is Orange County, California. And I'd gone to school at Pomona and Texas, and I'm like, you know, I think I enjoy living here more than St. Louis.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great. And then you've accomplished a lot of great things at Athletes First. Talk about record-breaking deals and everything. So you're both at Athletes First, and in the beginning of your time at Athletes First, in the beginning of your career, you guys worked together quite a bit, right? David, how was that? How did that go?
That was awesome. Me being new in the business and, just as importantly, never even knowing what the business was for the most part until, before the internship started. Just having somebody kind of to mentor you and kind of pass along all the knowledge they had and being so forthcoming with it was great. As we started to sign guys, obviously at the beginning of the career, I always want to make sure that Kess was involved, just because, when guys are giving you the opportunity to work with them, they're interested in your career, you just want to make sure that you don't mess it up, right? And having Kess, obviously, I knew, with everything he had already accomplished, that, I wanted to have somebody in my corner that was going to make sure the guys were taken care of. The contracts, the as they say, the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. So now it was phenomenal having, Kess there early on in my career, and I'm still here. But especially back then, just being somebody that I could rely on and, was always, ready to take a phone call and kind of answer any questions I had.
I would say, in some ways, an odd couple, right? You know what I mean? Kess grew up reading CBA. I know he did, right? And you didn't even know what a CBA was until you got here, right? Either did I. You're from Texas, you're from New York City. And so very different, but I'll say you guys have one thing that's absolutely in common. We talked about a little bit, like you guys always put the athletes first, right? You always advocate. Like there's no gray areas with it. There's like you're going to do what's best for your client. You're going to put the time, the effort, the work, the research, and you're going to deliver the best results. And we have the philosophy here, better together. I think you two, you guys personified better together. Would you agree with that?
No question. Also, I mean, like you said, different backgrounds, different things. But and again, this goes kind of beyond the podcast, but Dave and I have pretty similar personalities in a lot of ways too.
That is a part of the podcast. Yeah. Explain that, Kess. In what way?
We have similar personalities in that both of us are strong-willed, I think, and both of us have ideas about how we want to do things and have a lot of confidence in that. And I think that's an asset when you're negotiating contracts, when you're recruiting players, when you're in business. I mean, you're the same way. But we both are also open to other people's thoughts as long as I'm speaking for myself here, but I think David he'd agree, as long as we sort of respect those thoughts and those people, right? Like, we're not necessarily just going to listen to anyone, be polite, but we're open to listen to people who we think know what they're talking about, and that can be helpful. But yeah, I think we both, again, even though different backgrounds, different personalities, there are elements that are very similar. We kind of look at the world in a similar way. That was one thing when we met that struck me. Here's someone, again, we have a lot of differences, but in a lot of ways we're very similar.
Yeah, neither one of you are afraid to speak your mind and
Correct.
Stand up for what you think's right.
Correct.
All right, so let's get to the heart of the matter. Jordan Love, right? Record-breaking contract, controversial question from Utah State. Who identified him as someone we should recruit?
Man, if I remember correctly, we had I got a friend of mine who's a really good quarterback coach that I value his opinion, Quincy Avery.
Okay.
And Quincy had told me about Jordan, and started to look into him. I mentioned him to Kess, and I think Kess did some homework as well, and got some great feedback on Jordan, not only as a player but as a person as well. So we decided it was a target that somebody that we should go after, and I think that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, I remember pretty well. So Quincy mentioned to you a guy named Ryan Gunderson, who I believe is coaching somewhere now, probably in college, who was Sean Mannion's coach in college. He's a quarterback coach I was friendly with through Sean, one of my clients who's played a long time and now is a coach, was coaching at San Jose State and told me, hey, we played against this guy who's really good, really, really, NFL good. And I respected Gunderson's view on that. So I mentioned to David, and David's like, yeah, Quincy told me the same thing. And then, so we kind of researched it, and we found out Jordan's from Bakersfield.
Yep.
And Cody Kessler, who's a client of mine when he played, another quarterback also from Bakersfield, Bakersfield's not the biggest city in the world. So I'm like, 2 quarterbacks, both from Bakersfield, relatively similar age. Cody, his dad, someone, there has to be some probable connection. And it turned out Cody's high school coach also coached Jordan at 2 different schools because he had left the school Cody was at. I think Cody was at Centennial, see if I'm right on this, and then Jordan was at Liberty, and he had switched, so he coached both. His name's Brian Nixon.
Okay.
And there was that connection to Nixon. I think David, if I'm correct, had already been in touch with Jordan directly a little bit, and I got in touch with Nixon, and then we started chatting with his mom Anna, and kind of went from there.
I think coincidentally enough, I think also his quarterback coach was someone we had a relationship with, Steve Calhoun.
Yes, Steve Calhoun, his personal quarterback coach.
His personal quarterback coach is somebody that we have a relationship with who happened to be Jordan's coach as well. So there was a lot of tie-ins there between Quincy and Steve, and obviously the people that Andrew just spoke about.
And so you told us a little bit of how Deshaun Watson's recruiting went, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of out of the blue, like, how was this? You guys talked to him a lot, go to a lot of games, other agencies involved? Was it a cat fight? Like, what was it like?
I would say with Deshaun, again, as we talked about, it was a little different, right? Because Deshaun kind of shut everything down during the season. Unbeknownst to us, he shut it down. I was thinking he just wasn't responding to me, but he had shut it down. But, we had constant dialogue with Jordan. Went down there. I remember one time we were down there, we went bowling with him. Obviously spent a lot of time talking to his mom, Anna, who was a retired police officer. So I think, as far as from a recruitment standpoint, it was a pretty normal recruiting process. I know there was 1 or 2 other groups that were involved. Jordan wasn't the type of person that wanted to talk to a lot of people or spend a lot of time on it.
Sure.
So it wasn't very drawn out. But I think we felt good about it throughout the year, just the dialogue we had with him and his mom. Obviously, Kess jumped in, but
yeah, I would say sort of somewhat traditional, especially for the time. You had two people he was really relying on, his mom and his high school coach, and
He obviously signs with Athletes First, and you guys are very excited. At that time, when you signed him, not later, but at that time, what did you think of his NFL potential? Did you think he was a potential first-round pick, and did you think he was a potential franchise quarterback?
Sophomore year, I believe it was, he had a phenomenal junior year.
Richard sophomore.
His redshirt sophomore year, he had a phenomenal year. Played really, really well. Put up, ridiculous numbers, and was kind of really poised to be a first-round pick. And kind of depending on how that next year went for him. The following year, there were some changes on his team. A lot of starters ended up leaving.
He lost 9 of the other 10 stars. Remember, he told me
exactly 9 of the other 10 starters on the offense, and so. Things changed a little bit. Maybe the season statistically didn't go the way he wanted to. But I think, myself and Kess talking to people that we trusted in the industry and just watching him ourselves. I mean, he has all the arm talent in the world. I mean, has one of the best, as far as arm talent, one of the best in the league right now. And as a person, he's somebody that we believed in. And a lot of times in this business, you're betting on the person just as much as you are the football part of it, right? Because you can have all the talent in the world. But, if there's other things that get in the way of that talent, it doesn't matter. So I think for us, we both believed that he would be a first-round pick. It was just a matter of how high he was going to go. And, you can never assume that he's going to end up where he's at now as one of the top, quarterbacks in the NFL. But we feel really good about it.
Yeah, be a really good.
Let me answer for you, because I had lunch with you at the Combine that year. It was me, Greenberg, Kess sit down for lunch, and he's going through his guys in the draft class. And we're looking at it, and we're like, oh, what round is he going to go in? Where do you think he's going to go? And Kess goes, oh, he's a first-round pick. It's just a matter of how high. And me and Greenberg kind of look at each other because we know what the Bucs scouts have on all the players. And we're like, really? You think he's a first-rounder? He's like, oh, yeah, no doubt. No doubt he's a first-rounder. And we walk out of the meeting, and we're kind of thinking like, well, maybe that's just like an agent trying to hype up his guy. But then sure enough, he's a first-round pick.
That's when you worked for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right, so AJ, Kess thinks he's going to be a first-round pick. Tell us, what was he, where was he drafted, and what was historic about his rookie deal?
Yeah, so then he comes out and he ends up being the 26th overall pick, not to the team that anyone would have thought, right? Like they have a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers still playing there. And so they have him come up and they draft him. I want to know what did you guys think of that?
Yeah, so I was with Jordan. That was COVID, but I was able to drive up to his mom's place in Bakersfield. So I was with him. Not surprised that he got picked in the first round at all, and not surprised that he was sort of picked in the second part of the first round. We thought it was possible to go higher, but that was kind of the area we figured. Very strong QB draft with Burrow, Herbert, too, et cetera. he had visited the Packers right before the COVID shutdown, so we knew there was interest there. But I would say even going into that night, that would have not been one of the top 5 teams, most likely. It was I'd say surprising, not shocking.
Yeah.
Surprising, not shocking.
And the contract that you did, which is was 100% guaranteed, right?
Yes, it was.
First time ever at
For 26, yes, those guarantees
You
moved.
guys started setting record.
moved
right
yeah,
away.
those guarantees moved down the first round. But
Did you know, Kess, that he was the second quarterback ever out of Utah State to be taken in the first round?
I know a lot of facts. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Bill Munson was a 7th pick in the 1964 NFL draft.
The legendary Billy Munson.
The Rams. Yeah.
How'd he do?
No idea. No clue.
Probably not great because I haven't heard of him. I'm trying to think about the Packers. Yeah, so when he got the call, I had thought the Colts were possibly going to take him because there was a lot of interest and dialogue there, and they had a pick right there. And then they had traded back into the early part of the second round. I was talking to the GM about maybe they would move up. And so when the phone rang, I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is the Colts. And it was the Packers, and that was...
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons at the time, I think the Packers were looking to take a receiver maybe around that time, and the guy that they wanted, which I think was Brandon Ayuk, if I remember correctly, had just got taken off the board. And I think, to their credit, they went best available player. And Jordan was the best available player on their on their draft sheet. They decided to take him. I think, a lot of people were surprised, like he talked about, just because they had Aaron Rodgers, who was still in the prime of his career at the time. And but they invested in him, and similarly to what they did the first time around with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, right? They picked a quarterback while they had one sitting there, and it turns out now that they're looking pretty smart for doing so.
Certainly was. And with Rodgers too, right? I mean, not to get off subject, but both times they they did trade up to get Jordan a few spots once they're like, this is the time. But it's not like they came flying up for either guy, right? It's like people thought Rodgers might go 1 or 2. He sits there in the 20s. They take him, Jordan there. So yeah, I mean, you got to give him credit, a ton of credit for how they took both guys.
Right.
I think Brian Gutekunst had a lot of people kind of questioning that pick at the time, but you kind of fast forward to today, and he looks like a genius, I would say.
Right. So he goes to the Packers. First couple of years, he's sitting behind the guy who ends up winning the MVP. Wins back-to-back MVPs. Jordan's sitting there waiting for his opportunity. He gets through 3 years of his NFL career, and he's barely gotten on the field, right? He's passed for 600 yards over 3 seasons.
600 phenomenal yards if you want. No, I'm joking.
600 yards through 3 seasons, and the team now has to make a decision. They're saying
3 touchdowns, 3 picks.
Right, so nothing to write home about.
No offense, Jordan. I mean,
and the team
it's not much to evaluate him on in terms of gameplay.
And so the team has to make this decision at this point. Are they going to extend his rookie contract? Are they going to have him start? They decide that they're parting ways with Rodgers. However, that came to be, and now Jordan's going to be the starter. So do they approach you about adjusting his contract, or do you talk to them? How did that process go? Because this was a very unique situation.
It was. So they came to us.
Yes, just real quick. So he had played 3 years.
Yes.
As you know better than most. It's a 4-year deal with an option for the 5th.
Correct.
He was there 3 years.
Yeah.
He hadn't played 3 years.
Yeah,
he was there 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So they told us at the combine that they were unlikely to exercise the option because while they were committed to him being the starter, they were hesitant about guaranteeing that 5th year for that amount. But they wanted him to have a contract for the 5th year and give him some more money and not have him be in the position where, hey, you're replacing Aaron Rodgers and you're in the last year of your contract. Kind of, every single chip on the table.
Yeah.
And David and I said, again, we agree on some things. We'll listen to anything, right? You know what I mean? Like, we may not go for it, we may go for it. We got to talk to Jordan, but like, theoretically, okay, like, let's talk about it. And then in the spring, it did become apparent they weren't going to do the option because we both thought, well, maybe they actually will. And when it became apparent they weren't, it came down to, okay, if we're going to add it, if we're going to still give them a 5th year, what can we get for it? And we wound up getting an amount which guaranteed Jordan significantly more money than he would have made for the first 4 years of his rookie deal, right? Because the contract for the 26th pick in the draft is a 4-year deal for that time, $9.5 million in that range. So this guaranteed him 15 basically, above that 9.
Yep.
So sort of put him in a position that no matter what happens, he's now made well over $20 million. It was only 1 more year. So if things go really well in the 23 season, we'll still be in great position to do another deal. If things go okay, well, now he's under contract for the next year with guaranteed money. He's likely to get another crack at it. We put in upside. So if he played well, if the team did well, he could get up to what that 5th-year option number would be, or even above that. And he wound up getting just almost right to that number because he did well, the team did well. So we sort of thought, if you think about like a Venn diagram, we're covering all the bases as well as you could. And it made sense because you were mitigating a lot of risk. You were maybe giving up a little bit of leverage because, again, they wouldn't have to use the franchise tag. But as David and I said, look, if our issue is we're working off of this number versus the franchise number, means he had a great season and we're going to do a great contract for him next year.
And I think one thing.
Let me just finish one more thing. If things didn't go well or not as well as we hoped, we're really happy we had this contract versus going to free agency.
Yeah, and one thing we talked about with David when it came to Deshaun Watson was, it's not always you against the team. It's not always you against the team, right? Sometimes, like, you do work together, right? And I think it made a lot of sense. Like, is Jordan replacing Aaron Rodgers, right? And if he just had 1 year left, like, all your eggs in the basket, and he's one of the coolest customers I know, right? So it probably wouldn't, but like, you don't have to put him in that position, especially at that age and whatnot. And so you give a little bit, but you do everything that you said to make sure that you could cover all the bases. And, again, it's a win-win for the team. I think it's good.
I think for us, like, one thing that we talked about is that you never want to rob somebody of their first fortune, right? And for us, guaranteeing $15 million for Jordan, who hadn't made, I want to say it was around $9 million over the first 4 years of his deal, getting that $15 million guaranteed, again, that's life-changing money there, right? And as Kess stated, if he played really well, then maybe we gave up a little bit of leverage, but he's going to sign a couple $100 million deal regardless, right? We were wanting to cover.
Don't give away the end of the story.
Oh, my apologies. But if he didn't play as well or things went wrong, we wanted to make sure we covered kind of the worst case scenario, because that would be more life-changing than the other way around. So that was super important to us. And just having that comfort and that security, knowing if you go out there and maybe you don't have your best first couple games, you're not saying, hey, I'm kind of playing for my contract here, right? Knowing he had that second year that was also guaranteed to him, that first year he was starting, I think it kind of helped him ease his nerves and go in there knowing, hey, I don't have to kind of set the world ablaze right when I step on the field. And I think it was super helpful for him, not only, mentally, but I think, kind of carried over to his play.
Yeah, and just to add up, right, I mean, the season started well in the first few games, then it didn't go so great, and then it picked back up. But like we talked during the year, we talked to Jordan, like when things were not going great, it was nice knowing he had a deal for the next year. And I think from the team's perspective too, like they were, they were mentally committed for 23 and 24.
Yeah.
So again, when 23 was not going maybe as they had hoped, it obviously picked up and went great. They weren't thinking, well, let's pivot now. They were committed. So having the deal, like you said, I think was a true win-win for both sides there.
So he goes, he plays 2023. Kess, you kind of described how it went a little bit. And at the end, he ended up winning a playoff game, making the playoff, winning a playoff game.
Second in the league in touchdown passes.
Yeah, and it's like, top 30, 34 player, the top 100, whatever that was. But like he plays well. He's not the MVP of the league. He didn't go
second half of the season, he was without question one of the very best QBs this year.
So overall, it was a great year. You just did the contract negotiations. The season ends. Like, when do the new negotiations start?
So because of CBA, you have to wait a year, obviously, between negotiations and a renegotiation. So we had to wait a calendar year. But I think right after the season ended, we felt really good that he had done enough at that point to kind of earn himself, a major contract. They started right around a year after the prior negotiation had ended.
So what month is that?
Man,
what month
did you start the new negotiations?
Well, they told us the combine we want to obviously do a deal.
I think it was May.
And then technically May was when we had done the 23 deal.
Okay.
So then May of 24,
So you start the contract negotiations May, and at this point, you sit down with Jordan and you ask what was important to Jordan at that point.
Man, for Jordan, I think he obviously he wanted to extend his career there. They gave him the opportunity. They drafted him. That was super important. Him staying in Green Bay. He obviously loved the head coach there, LaFleur. Goody obviously drafted him, so he had that in his mind. But again, kind of the same narrative that we talked about over and over is our clients trust us to do what's best, right? So in his mind it was, hey, get me what you guys think is the best deal I can get, and so I can kind of focus on being the starter here, knowing that this is my team, that I get to lead the locker room. So for us, it was a matter of kind of going out there and seeing what the marketplace was. And at the time, I believe the highest paid quarterback in the league then was Joe Burrow, was it?
Burrow at that 5-year, $55 million.
Burrow's at 5 years, $55 million. So that's that was kind of what we took aim for, right? Burrow had just done his deal. Obviously, Burrow's a phenomenal football player and had a great deal. And for us, it was like, how do we, top that?
Yep.
And it was a fun back and forth. If I remember correctly, I think as we were going through it, Kess was in Japan, if I'm correct.
I was.
So we had to it was a fun game.
You gotta say, where were you?
I don't even remember. I was at Mexico, right?
Hawaii.
Hawaii. So again, you get all these
strategy by you guys, just getting different time zones,
right?
and
Just to confuse them. But no, we had to kind of figure out times that worked.
Yeah, it was so
for Andrew and for Russ Ball, who
was in Green Bay. Well, what had happened was we both kind of figured the deal would likely be done by training camp, and we both had family trips planned that first week of training camp. David's in Hawaii with his family.
Normally we do trips around training camp because that's when guys are occupied and they're busy. So that's why we picked that time of the year. It's like that, when guys are in camp at the time where you really have you only really the real downtime in this business, right? Or when guys are busy with camp. So that's why we were both
correct
out of the country.
Correct. So he planned a trip, I planned a trip, and we both kind of thought the deal would be done. And we even almost thought like, oh, it's like a little bit of a soft deadline. Didn't go that way. So David's in Hawaii, I'm in Japan, and Russ is in Green Bay. And yeah, we are finding like the 1 hour a day that it's not either, middle of the night somewhere, or crack of dawn or something's not going on, for us all to get on the phone and work on it and obviously talk to Jordan. But, one thing, to your better together and really helped, I think for both of us was like, again, having a relationship with Jordan, having so much trust, like it was fine. Like if it was 3 a.m. my time and David needed to talk to Jordan, David, you talk to Jordan, like tell me what happened. Same thing, the reverse, Kess, you talk to Jordan, you talk to Jordan, or you talk to us, you talk to us. And again, like that can actually be sometimes beneficial with two agents for a variety of reasons. But in this case, it was totally fine, and it worked out really well. But yeah, there's a great. My wife took a great picture of me in Japan in Nara, surrounded by deer at a deer park, on the phone, like locked in, talking with like 9 deer all over me, working on the deal. It's a good family picture.
Well, it's a good thing too. You're doing it with Russ Ball, is one of our favorite people, and just very understanding, family guy himself.
He was. At one point, he got a little frustrated. He's like, you're in Tokyo and he's in Maui, and like, but yes, he was great. Russ was great. It was Jordan. We wound up getting the deal done a few days into training camp, but for the type of deal it was, for the type of negotiations, it was as harmonious as could be.
Yeah, and then at the same time, we talked about this. Like at the same time, AJ and Ryan were working on Tua, and AJ and Todd were working on Dak. Like, talk a little bit like how did having all that information, under the same roof, how did that help you guys with Jordan's deal?
It's helpful because obviously we're talking about the marketplace, and David mentioned the Burrow contract, and then Trevor Lawrence gets his deal done during the year. During our negotiations, which is a 5-year, $55 million deal, and that deal gets done, and we thought that helped our position a lot. And then knowing that Tua's deal would likely be done, Dak's deal, well, if it wasn't going to be done right away, it'd be done at some point, you could kind of talk about not only where the market is at the time, but where it's going. And that's a big thing because, and in some of these other episodes I've listened to, you talk about the current market, you talk about the cap growth, right? But you also want to talk about where it's going to be, especially when you're doing a 4-year extension with a year left, it's a 5-year total contract. So knowing where the market is and where it's going really allowed us to analyze it in the best way, to make the best arguments, to get the best deal. So that was certainly, advantageous, I think for all of us, because we had an idea that Tua was likely to also get done at a very similar time, more than an idea. We knew, it was unlikely Tua was going to go fully practice without a contract the same way Jordan wasn't. In the Dak situation was a little bit different. He's in the last year of a major veteran deal. He has a no franchise clause. He played through a tag. Dak's deal we thought could get done, and if it did, it was get done at some point. But that's a little different time frame. But knowing that was out there and having some insight, very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is always as you do these contracts is how do you continue to elevate kind of the marketplace for the position, right? The goal is how do we, if Trevor Lawrence did his deal and we know Tua's going and we're going and that whatever that order is you always want to do something better on the next contract for these elite level guys so that it benefits the next guy, which may or may not be your guy. In this case, it happened to be our guys with Tua and Dak and Jordan. But in other situations, if you could make it better for another player that maybe you don't represent, and then he makes it better, it comes back around when it's your turn to negotiate a contract for your guy. So I think for us, and Russ is a smart guy. Russ Ball at Green Bay, like you said, he knew that, and we made sure to, let him know we knew that A2 was going to get done, but B, that Dak, because of what, our partner Todd France had negotiated his deal with a no franchise clause, him and AJ, that deal was going to move the market. And so knowing that Jordan maybe hadn't had as many starts as these other guys, but knowing where the market was going to go, we were able to really push on that. And our goal was, hey, for Jordan being so young, knowing that, his best football is ahead of him, we wanted to try to do a 4-year deal as opposed to the top of the market 5-year deals that had been done by, Burrow, that had been done by Lawrence. These 5-year deals, which are also great deals, but how do we improve that, right? It's to get that same average on less years so you can get back to the table sooner. And that's what we were able to do with Jordan. Again, a win-win. The team obviously wants to sign him to an extension. They believed in him. They drafted him. So this, anytime you can draft a guy and then give him a large contract, I know the public may not see it as so since you're paying him so much, but GMs are happy to do so because hey, I picked the right guy in the draft. So I think for Goody, Russ, and those guys in Green Bay, they considered it a win. And obviously, when we were able to get him and make him the highest-paid quarterback on a 4-year deal. The largest 4-year number ever, and tied for the highest average ever on any type of deal. It was we thought it was a win-win for us. Jordan was obviously ecstatic. So no, we were happy to kind of see, where it started. Everybody's road. We always tell people everybody's road is different. It's all about the destination. When you get there, do you end up where you want to be, right? And him sitting behind A-Rod, learning from A-Rod, picking up, kind of tendencies and how A-Rod prepared and being one of the best ever. I think that was super helpful to Jordan. And if he had it to do all over again, I don't think he'd have had it any other way.
Yeah. AJ, why don't you give us the stats? I mean, these guys know it, but for the listeners, what was this record-breaking deal?
Yeah, so the final deal ends up being the $55 million per year, which it hit the high watermark there with those other two deals. But the big win to separate this deal was that it was a 4-year term rather than those other two deals were 5-year terms. It had a $75 million signing bonus, which was the largest in NFL history. It also had $160 million of guarantees. And I want to say the stat there is that it is the largest pro rata guarantee, new guarantee.
Basis,
so on a per year basis, the largest new guarantee at the time.
Yeah, one thing, just briefly, but in general, NFL contracts are different than baseball and hockey and basketball. So everyone wants to compare every single contract, and they don't all compare perfectly, right? You have a free agent contract to an extension, or a guy who extends with 1 year left or 2 years left. So when we do a deal, particularly in this case for Jordan, it's like, let's do things that are unprecedented and excellent for Jordan in this context, right? So again, that $75 million signing bonus, which was all paid within 6 months, that's something which is extremely valuable to him in a real life way. And we had an opportunity to do that because the team we were working with, that was an important thing. When other teams that type of signing bonus, that payment's just not going to be on the table. So you focus on different things. But because of the nature of NFL contracts versus some of the other team sports, there's different things you focus on. So everything AJ said there, those are the things that we were looking to maximize for Jordan and what made sense for him in this context, in this contract, which is different, right? Than the amazing deal David did for Deshaun, which is a 5-year fully guaranteed contract.
Yep.
That was going to happen in that situation. That wasn't going to be this situation with Jordan here. So, okay, well, what can we do that makes sense for him here that works?
Right.
The goal is to negotiate the ideal contract for that player.
Correct.
Right?
In that
person.
situation.
Yeah, in that situation. Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, an unbelievable story, record-breaking podcast. Kess, we end all these, as you might have seen, lessons learned. I will say one of our first podcasts went up, and one of the comments was, you need Mulugheta and Kessler on this. So whoever that was, here they are.
Thank you to that person who ever said that.
Yeah,
Wow.
you should give him a raise.
I think that was my son DJ.
Was that DJ Mulugheta and Jordan Kessler?
I'm joking.
But lessons learned from me, and I go back. I learned this lesson from Drew Bledsoe, and like I said, I don't work with Jordan, but I got to know him over the years, and you get someone drafted behind Aaron Rodgers, and that's not ideal in his mind. He wants to go out and he wants to play, and he wants to do things right. But watching Jordan being out there, envisioning AJ Dillon, all the guys that we represent, Coach LaFleur, man, Jordan Love, just what I saw, he never complained. He never said this isn't fair. He never, and he might have to you guys, probably publicly in the locker room with his teammates. He put his best foot forward, and he sat and he waited. But he didn't just sit and wait. He got better. He got better. He got better. He challenged himself. So then when the time came, he was ready to go. And I think in today's sports world, we hear a lot of the griping. We hear a lot of contract fights and this and that. But here's a kid from Utah State, from Bakersfield, California, drafted in the first round, waiting 3 years, and then coming out and performing like he did on the field, being the leader that he is in the locker room, being the great guy he is in the community, and then to see all of that get paid off. He did the right things with the right reasons, the right people, and then he got the highest paid contract in NFL history. And then eventually he's going to get a Super Bowl too, right? But that's awesome, man. And you guys know behind what he deserves it. He's just a great person. And so my lesson learned, man, that's when things go wrong, you got to be like Jordan Love and just keep going straight. AJ?
Yeah, I think my lesson learned from this is really going to go back to the first veteran deal. I guess we'd call it a veteran deal that you guys did for Jordan, where it's one of those positions where you're not sure what the future is going to be. You're not sure how he's going to perform when he gets the opportunity to be the full-time starter. But you have to take into account the mentality of the player, because we're not negotiating for widgets, right? We're not just doing this on an Excel spreadsheet. You have to think about the player's mentality and what is going to help him in his career long-term. And in this case, it was taking into account that the security of getting him some additional money this year and locking in some guarantees for next year, although below the level of what he was going to be worth after that season, it was enough to keep him, hopefully mentally locked in and, willing to get on the field and go out there and play loosely so that he could do what he did. And then you get right back to the table and you get to maximize the next deal anyway. So I think that was my takeaway from this one.
No widgets. Yeah. David?
I mean, I think for me, what it taught me, especially Jordan, seeing the way he handled it, was sometimes you got to be, you got to be stubborn on your vision, but you can be flexible on the details, right? And what I mean by that is he was focused on where he wanted to be, but he didn't look over and say, hey, man, I got a guy that was drafted in my same draft class like Tua or Justin Herbert or
They're all playing right.
or even like a Jalen Hurts, right? Who got to play early. And it's sometimes you see your vision and it's not going your way and you start to not, really believe that that's where you're going to end up. But I think for him, like I said, he was stubborn on the vision, the details he was flexible on, right? In his case, hey, I had to sit behind one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. How do I make the best of this? Well, I'm going to make sure that I watch the way he studies, the way he prepares, and just all the things he does to make himself, Aaron Rodgers, a Hall of Fame quarterback, right? So I think for him, I think he handled it the right way. I don't know that a lot of quarterbacks would have been able to handle it the way he did. But for me, that's what that would be what I learned.
Love that. Stubborn on the vision, flexible on the details.
Yeah.
That's my diet philosophy. So I appreciate that. Gesh?
Yep. Along the same lines, I'll quote one of my older clients who I got to represent end of his career, Brian Waters. He said, everyone always focuses on what they don't have, but you should really focus on what you do have a lot of the time. And I think that's what Jordan did. Again, he wasn't playing. It wasn't really in his hands when he was going to play, but what did he have? He was in, he was in Green Bay. He was learning from Aaron Rodgers. He was learning from a great head coach. He knew he had a really good organization around him. He knew he had a really good team around him, right? And he knew that at some point when he got on the field, he was set up for success, right? You hear people talk all the time, set up for success. And is this, so much of the quarterback play is reflective of what's around them. He knew the right stuff was around him. and he knew at some point he would get his chance. And so he focused on that, did all the right stuff. So when the chance came, he could take advantage of it. And I think if more people, football, non-football, sports, non-sports, whatever, had that philosophy, right? Again, focus on what you do have, not what you don't. That would probably lead to a lot of success. I mean, it's something I try to do myself. I'm certainly not perfect at it, but I try to do that as well.
No, great lesson, Kess. I want to thank Kess for coming on your first podcast. Amazing job. David, 3 podcasts in a row. We're going to see you for the safety series.
I'm retired.
Podcast hat trick right there.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Retired at this point.
Well, guys, we really appreciate it. At the end of this podcast, the next podcast is we're going to bring Todd France in, and we're going to talk about the Dak Prescott deal, although you gave that ending away too. And we look forward to that. So thanks, guys. And thank you for all you've done for Athletes First. We obviously wouldn't be the same without you. And it's been a fun ride, and we're just getting started, I think, in some ways. So we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun.